Hi everyone, welcome back to the Jansen Art Studio. Now what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about varnishing. First what we'll do is we'll varnish up here a couple of pieces, and I'll show you like on a tin tray and a wood piece and stuff here. And then we'll move into another video where we'll do large canvas surfaces. So there'll be a couple of different videos on this that you might want to look for. Okay? Alrighty. So the varnishes that we have here in the Heritage line, these are 16-ounce bottles. These are pretty much empty because I just mixed up some more. But it comes as a gloss and a matte. Now the gloss is really shiny. The matte is not 100% what we call a dead matte. It has still just a little bit of a shine to it. So, I mean, I really like it. I don't like a 100% dead matte, and I know it's very popular. But if you want a 100% dead matte, you put the matte varnish on, let it dry completely, and then you just take a little steel wool, a little 5/0 steel wool, and you move in a little circular motion, and that deadens the entire varnish down completely. So it's a wonderful technique. It's an old technique. It's hundreds of years old. We've done that for a long time. I've done it for over 30 years, and this works really well. So I like the matte to have just a tiny bit of shine to it, because it helps pop the colors just a little bit more. But anyway, so you have two. Now, which one do I like best? I like both. I like to make kind of my satin. And what I do is I take a very large container like what I have here. You can see gloss and matte. I take them 1-to-1, and I make kind of a satin varnish that I really enjoy. I put them in my own separate container. If you are going to use a container like this, Tupperware container, make sure that you always keep these rims really clean. Wipe them down with a paper towel, because you will get some varnish on those, and then they're hard to unscrew the lid. So make sure before you you put it away that you clean the lid and stuff. But I put it in here about 1 and 1, equal amount of each, and then I shake it up real well. And you can see I just mixed this. It has some bubbles in it. That won't hurt anything. We have a medium that's in there that pops those little bubbles and stuff, so you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. So bubbles when you're putting it out on there won't hurt it at all. Okay, so a lot of people worry about bubbles and stuff, and it's not really, if you have a really good varnish, you don't really have to worry about it. But if you worry about it, just set it aside for an hour or so and those will pop. But I don't. I just shook it up really well. I mixed it up, and then I shook it up really well like that, and opened up the lid, and I'm ready to varnish. Now, what I like to use when I varnish is this. This is our varnish brush. This is a 2-inch. It's the Fusion hair on it, synthetic squirrel. It is a beautiful varnish brush. And wash it really well when you're done with it. I watched a guy, a professional painter, and he said you should, when you're washing your brush, you should wash it for at least 5 minutes or so. Don't wash it up underneath the thing like this, because you wick water down to it, but you wash it like this in your hand for at least 5 minutes until that thing comes out completely clean. And what I do when I'm done with varnishing, what I do is I take out a little bit of extender medium, put it out on my palette here, and I dress my varnish brush into it. I just run my varnish brush through it after I've washed it, and then that keeps it. And then that brush will be nice the next time you go to grab that. So it works really well. First, let me just show you some of the problems that you have with it. The varnish itself, when you use the varnish, okay, is really thick. It is very thick. It's made to be thick so you can paint vertical surfaces, because we do a lot of furniture, and I do a lot. As a matter of fact, I'm just starting to work on another armoire, and I'm going to want to varnish that. And I don't always have the surface down flat to varnish it. Sometimes I'll be varnishing it vertical. So we make the medium really thick so it doesn't sag. It doesn't run down and sag. Now, to counter that, you can have out a little cap of water, or you can have out a little spray bottle full of clean water. And I'll show you some of the different ways to do it. One of the things that, now this is just a regular matte surface. This painting that I have here is just regular matte surface, and there's nothing on it. One of the things, a lot of people are afraid to varnish. Now this varnish I'm going to show you is pretty foolproof, but a lot of people are afraid to varnish. And and it is a little bit scary sometimes. And so what I suggest that you do, and I don't have the product out, but here, let's see if I have it out over here. Yes, I do have it right here. Is the smaller one of it. This is the multi-surface sealer. Okay, the multi-surface sealer is really kind of a urethane varnish. The varnish that we make the gloss and the matte are polyurethanes, which means they are very, very hard. They're very hard, durable. But the surface sealer itself is what we call a urethane. It is a protective varnish, and it brushes on just like magic. There's no problems with it whatsoever. Brushing it on, there's never a problem with it, and because it doesn't have that extra hardening agent in it, so it brushes on really well. So if you're at all worried about varnishing, protect your painting first with a coat of sealer, and you can do that. I'm going to show you how it's not necessary, but a lot of my students like to give a coat of sealer first and then let that dry at least an hour or so, and then go on with their varnishing, and they never have anything to worry about because the sealer makes the varnish go on just absolutely perfect. Now, one of the problems is this is a matte surface. It's matte. And I painted this painting here using, and there's no sealer in it whatsoever anywhere, so it's matte. So it's going to want to drink the moisture right out of the varnish when I'm varnishing it. What I do to start a varnish, though, and you don't have to worry about it as long as you understand the varnish. To start the varnish, what's going to drink out of the varnish? Water. So to start a varnish, what I do is I just dip my brush into a little bit of water. And then I'll just go ahead and pick up some of the varnish here onto my brush. Now, what you don't want to do is just flood the surface of your painting like that with the varnish where it's really, really thick, where you get that cloudy look through it. There. That, and I'll show you why in just a little bit, but you don't want to do that. What I like to do is just to work it in, I don't work it in big long strips. I work the varnish in little strikes like this. And you can see how it goes out really even, and how it immediately gets rid of all the brush marks. There's a leveling agent in it, so it immediately gets rid of the brush marks and stuff into it. You don't have to worry about it. But you don't want to do this kind of stuff where you put this on. Matter of fact, let me blow it here. Let me put on a lot of varnish here real thick. This is what some of my students do right away. They think, oh, I want to lake the varnish onto the surface. Now, what you don't want to do is do exactly that. And you don't want to have too much water. If you put too much water into this thing, a lot of people just say, well, I'll put lots and lots of water into it. Now, I'm not, I'm not destroying this painting. This varnish is very forgiving. It can do a lot of stuff, and so I'll show you how we can fix all of this. It's okay. I'm going to really make a mistake here, though, with this painting here, and do it this way here. And we'll put this on here, and we'll just brush it out like that. And then so they get this huge lake effect. And even with that lake effect, you'll see that the varnish, it's just laked onto the surface there, is starting to level out. You can see where it's starting even over here. You could just watch it just start to level out and find its level. And that's because of the leveling agent. It's in there, and it's made to do that. It is not really great, though, to lake that on, because what happens is that leveling agent and the polyurethane that's in it, they have a pulling action. And what will happen after a little bit of time, and it's going to start happening here, you'll see it start to pull and bead up. See how it's starting to pull and bead up here like this? Because the varnish is on too thick. So, and it'll start doing that, and it'll start doing it after a few minutes. You'll see a few holes here and stuff like that. I'm going to set this aside, and just to show you how we can correct it. That painting is going to be perfect here in just a minute. So I'm going to set it aside there, and we'll come back and work on it again in just a minute. Here's a tin surface. Now, the tin surfaces are one of the hardest things to varnish because they conduct. Where that one felt very warm, that surface, this feels very cool. It conducts a lot of the room temperature, a lot of what's going on in the room that you have. A tin surface like this does, or steel. This is a steel tray. Here. Now, when you varnish, the actual best way to varnish is just a little bit of water, just a little bit. Put your brush in, and then stretch the varnish out. As you varnish like this, I varnish in short little motions of the brush like this, and I start to stretch it out as far as I can go with it. That's what you want to do. It is in any type of paint chemistry, that you're dealing with, it is far better to put on two thin coats than one big thick coat. There's a little hair came out of that brush there. And So it's better to put on thin coats than thick coats. And so this just starts to drag here a little bit. That's when I stop that area, when it starts to get a little draggy. You can go all the way through this until it's completely dry. You can see I can go all the way through this till it's completely dry. If it bothers you and you get like a little dry edge or anything like that, or you're afraid of something, you can just mist it with a little bit of water. And that just reactivates the varnish and lets the varnish go and do its thing. And I will continue on here, but you don't want to put it on thick. You want to stretch it and stretch it and stretch it. And if you need to, you can mist with a little water. I don't like to add water that often to it because that thins it out and gives it the ability to pull against each other. So I don't like to do that, and I don't need to do that. See, I can work this, and I can work this just as it's almost dry. If it gets a little draggy in some areas, just mist a little water on the surface, and it allows you to come back again. And you can see, even when I stroke that brush over, I'm not leaving brush marks on it. That's because the varnish is already leveling, and this brush is magic in conjunction with it. So at first I put it on really heavy pushing of my brush. Then when I go to my smoothing coats, I just lift up the pressure a little bit and just lightly drag over the surface. And I like it when it starts to get draggy. When it starts to drag a little bit, that's when I know I'm doing really well. And you just let that thing level, and you can see it just all levels out really, really well. Now, I can, while that's even starting to dry, I can take just a little bit of varnish here, and I like to work the varnish. This varnish is wonderful. You can work it, work it, work it. You won't pull holes, tear it up, or do anything, so you can brush it pretty hard. As a matter of fact, when you see the large canvas video, the varnishing, the large canvas video, I'll show you on that one just how hard I make that varnish really work. So I put this on all the way around. Even though this is a little tacky here, you don't have to worry about it. The varnish does not tear up. I can come right over that with another coat of varnish, or with this little edge here, and see it just reconstitutes it and just levels it out. It works so well. If I'm at all afraid, I just mist a little water, but I don't have to. I just push the varnish, work the varnish. You don't flow this varnish on. You work this varnish onto the surface. Work it onto the surface, and it'll give you a beautiful coat every time. If your brush starts to get a little sticky, you can add a little bit of water to it, and that'll loosen it right up and make it feel really nice again. But you don't have to. You know, you can work this, you know, all the way with real heavy, heavy varnish here. So I'll work that like that. Now, you can see that's just a beautiful coat on that right there like that. Now, this is starting to tack up. Even if I put my handprint in it, just like that. Now you see my handprint in it like that. You start to worry about that. You go, you don't need to worry about that. Just mist it lightly like this, okay? And just come right back through it again, and it'll take that right out. And I like I say, I like to go all the way through sometimes I'll go all the way through the drying process of the varnish. Very, very, very light pressure. Just the pressure of the brush going over the surface. I like that sometimes because it just self-levels and gives you such a beautiful coat that way. You don't have to be afraid of this varnish. It's, you know, the older varnishes we made in the 80s and the 90s, they picked up and they rolled and you created all kinds of problems. And, you know, they were just little nightmares. But since I've stretched this one out and it's not laked on, it's going to dry here really nice. I'll check it a couple of times as it's drying. But let's go back to this board. Let's see how we've messed it up. Look at how the board now has messed up. See what I'm talking about here? See all of this pulling because it lakes? Because I put it on so thick that it's just laked on there, okay? And that's created kind of a problem. Now, how do you go to fix it? Well, you can take your magic brush right here, and go right through it, and that will do it. But it'll continue to lake a little bit because you have too much on there. So what I'll do is take a paper towel with a little bit of moisture on it. Sometimes I varnish with a paper towel, and I've showed that in other videos too. And I'm just going to pull through this whole piece here. Now it's been, and some of this has started to dry over here too. you know, it started to dry. But the water's going to reactivate this varnish for just a little bit. Not for, you know, you can't do it 5 hours later, but within, you know, 10, 15 minutes, this is going to be fine. I'm going to take off some of this extra varnish here like this, right off the surface here. I'll mist it with just a little bit of water here, just a little bit, because that's what's left. I'll reactivate the varnish just a little bit. Like I say, you can do this for, you know, 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes. And then after that, you kind of have to like what it is, because it does start to tack up. I mean, get too tacky where the varnish can't fix it up anymore, or the water can't fix it up anymore. And I'll just go over this, and you can see it's leveling it right on down, and it'll dry absolutely clear. There's a couple of spots here where it's still a little thick, where I didn't wipe it down enough. So I push the varnish around. This is where I push it around with my brush, and I get that nice even coat all the way across. That's what I'm looking for, is that nice even coat as it's drying down. You can see the edges out here are starting to dry a little bit. And even right here where it's like super dry out there and got a little bit of that beading out there, I'll just mist it. And I just misted my tray too. So, but you don't have to worry about it. I'll just mist that lightly like this. That will reconstitute that varnish just a bit there, see? And then that little beading is gone, see? See how flat and nice? You can see that little beading is all gone there off of that. The other way is, if you notice and it does bead up on you or something because you put it on too thick, and that does happen, you know, because, you know, life gets in our way like that, and you can't get it down like this, then you let it dry, and then you just wet sand it, and then you come back and do it again. But you can see, even after that, I can come back, even where it's starting to dry down in through here, still doesn't hurt it. It won't pull up a hole or anything like that. All you have to do at any time is just mist it with a little water, and you can come back through, pick up that varnish, and redistribute it, and smooth it out a bit, and get a nice flat even surface again all the way, even though you had all of that terrible beading and it had already started to dry and all that kind of stuff. Now I just misted this with water in here. It doesn't hurt anything. I just come right back through it again. This is such great varnish, and you put it in conjunction with this super soft varnish brush like this. This is a super soft varnish brush, and even though this is a little sticky and tacky over it, I can go right over it with my brush and not hurt the varnish whatsoever. And you can see I get a beautiful varnish tray coat down on the whole thing there, and you can see there's no brush marks anywhere in that surface. See the glare, watch the glare. There's no brush marks anywhere in that surface. There's no beating up of it anytime. Everything came down flat now. And the coat is absolutely perfect. Now I let this dry. Sometimes I'll varnish within 30 minutes. I'll put a second coat on and go right for it. Sometimes I'll let it dry overnight and stuff. You shouldn't let it go past like 48 hours or so. If you do, then you should sand it lightly with like a 220 or something like that sandpaper. And why? Just because the varnish is super hard, and if it gets really hard, you know, we put another coat on, you know, when it gets really hard, it's hard for the next coat to stick to it. Now, our varnishes sticks to each other really well, and that's really not a problem. But I always say, past 48 hours, always sand just a little bit, give it just lightly, just give a little tooth, something for the next varnish coat to grab onto. But many times I've varnished a year later, a second coat, just tossed it on, and it's fine, because we do have a softening, a bonding agent in it, and it makes it all work. But you can see you get a beautiful coat there, all the way around there like that. And let's see how this one is drying up. Absolutely nice onto that one too, and that was nice and flat. There'll be a few little highs and lows. It was a little thicker right there, but see, it's not beating up anymore because I've taken off all the excess. It's not beating up anymore. So you get beating up you'll get beating up if you use too much water in your brush. You've made the varnish so thin it just wants to bead up. You'll get beating up if you put too much varnish on the surface and get that lake effect on there, because it's a polyurethane. It wants to pull and tighten onto each other. And all you have to do is just go right back through it. Take off some of the excess and go right back through it. Keep a little moisture in your brush, just a little bit. Use a little spray bottle around. Don't add too much water though, because water thins it out. And water thins it out so much you thin out the glue and you're making weak varnish. So you don't need to use it. Just a little bit of water to cause it to work. And as you varnish with it, you'll feel a damp brush causes it to move really well. So you control the thicknesses of it. I use it a little, I like to keep it thick because I can thin it really easy. Rather than having a thin varnish, I like to have it a little thicker so I can use it on my furniture pieces and stuff like that. And I just thin it with just a little damp, push the brush right into the water there, a little damp brush, and it makes an absolutely beautiful surface. Now this is still just a little tacky here, but see, I could, even while it's tacky, I could take a little bit of this varnish and go right back into it again. Now our old varnishes that we made in the 80s and stuff like that, I would be picking up and rolling this varnish like crazy right now. It would all turn cloudy white and would be absolutely horrible. Not anymore. These are today's newer generation varnishes. These things work like magic. I just add just a little bit of water to it because the surface is a little bit tacky and wants to grab it. So the water will cause it to slide over it a little bit. And I just put on, so see, I can do it right within 10 minutes or even faster, 5 minutes, and put another coat right on top of that. You can see you get a beautiful, beautiful effect, and you can build it up. So remember, it is much better to use just a little bit of varnish, stretch it out, stretch, 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 don't lake it on, stretch it out, stretch it out, stretch it out. Move that varnish around, stretch it out. If you need to, you can mist it with a little bit of water. But I like to stroke with it all the way as this varnish feels like it's drying up and getting tacky. If you've never varnished like this before, take a board covered with paint and try it, moving it out here and moving it around. You can see I can stroke this, lighten the pressure on your brush, lighten the pressure. I can stroke this. You see I get a beautiful, beautiful, no brush marks, beautiful coat. This is going to dry absolutely beautiful when it's all done. You can see how it wakes up those colors and stuff, and it'll be a beautiful piece. Now I'm going to do one video here where I do a large surface. I'm going to show you also how to do a large surface, and we'll put all of these videos up onto our websites. So try to find that other larger surface, larger canvas one too, because I do it almost the same, but just a little different when I have a big surface, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay? Alrighty. I'll see you on those others, and enjoy the varnish. Don't be afraid of it. See you later.